Okay, let's now come to understanding Pathfinder. I want to begin by telling you there are 4 very important things Pathfinder leaders need to remember. If you serve in the Pathfinder Club, oh, by the way, you can see how beautiful the uniform is for the Australian. All right, I have attended their division camp before. That's how the Australian Pathfinder look like. They all wear this broad brim hat. That's because of the Australian sun. Okay, all right, they're very nice and they're very friendly people. Now, there are 4 things Pathfinder leaders need to remember. The first thing you need to remember, right, when you serve in the club, is that every one of the Pathfinder is a precious child of God. If you can remember this from the very beginning, you will remember that God has given you an incredible privilege to work with them and to help them come back to God and to know God if they don't know that they are children of God. And to me, this is my motivation. Whenever I work in the Pathfinder Club, I look at every one of the Pathfinder that I work with, especially the little one, as people whom the Lord Jesus died for. And they need to know my Lord Jesus. They need to know about our wonderful God for what He did. And hopefully, through my example, through my love, my coaching, my instruction, and my time with them, the God that I love with all my heart will become the God that they will learn to love with all their heart. Because why? The Lord died for them. So every Pathfinder is a precious child of God for whom the Lord died. Number 2. Now, this is so important. Now, please understand this, okay? Even though we are uniform body and we do things in unison, we do things together, but yes, there is this idea of teamwork, togetherness, but you must never forget this thing. Like a snowflake, if you look at every snowflake that's fallen, and then you put it under microscope, none of the snowflake ever look the same under a powerful microscope. Like a snowflake that is different, every child is also likewise different. So please understand this. When you work with Pathfinder, this is a very important piece of advice, a very important area of understanding. What is it? That every Pathfinder is different. They look the same. You think they are the same, but they're not. And you must respect their individuality, and you must respect their individual personality. All right. You must recognize that they are different, a person in their own right, an individual in their own right, and affirm their individuality. Sometimes allow them to do things their way, especially in arts and craft, especially in a project. Allow them to exercise their personal creativity. And in so doing, you are doing the right thing. Okay. You are affirming their individuality, their individual personality. All right. Number 3, another thing you need to uh, so-called remember about working with Pathfinder, and that is value each child by knowing their stories. Every child has their own set of story, and there are 6 stories that a good Pathfinder counselor, remember a counselor is assigned to unit between 6 to 8 or 4 to 8 members. And if you have worked with them for a year, I hope within a year you would have really known their 6 story, which I call the 3 P's and the 3 F. Do you know about their past? Where did they come from? What actually happened in the past? Which school did they study before? That kind of stuff. Something about the past. Do you know about the past? Do you know about their passion? What they are so excited about that makes them laugh? That they are so excited. They are so motivated. The thing they love to do. And do you know about their pain? Now, this is the hardest information to extract. Do you know their sad story in their life? The thing that hurt them. All right, maybe a death in the family, a divorce, or they were abused or whatever. These are difficult things to extract. But as they learn to trust you, you learn about the pain. And the moment you know somebody's pain, you have truly become a good friend, a good counselor to the person. And of course, all this information are to be confidential, especially pain. Nobody will tell you about the pain unless they really trust you deep enough. Then you know about the 3F, you know about the family, all right? That they're their youngest child, that their oldest child, middle child. You also know whether they're twins or they're paternal twin, identical twin. You also know whether they're adopted children or they're stepchildren for that matter, all right? Family background. You know about their future plans, right? What they want to do, what are their aspirations. And you know about their faith, what do they believe in. Some believe in God, some don't, and some, if they do believe in God, they may not necessarily believe in the Christian God. All right, but the question is, what do they believe in? What do they put their faith in? Faith in themselves, faith in God, faith in their parents, or whatever. So these are the 6 stories that every good Pathfinder leader should work hard to know about each Pathfinder. And when you do that, I would say you are an excellent leader, especially for a counselor. All counselors, I challenge you to learn about their 6 story, their past, their passion, their pain, their family, their future, and their faith. The 4th things to remember in working Pathfinder: each child can be transformed by the power of God into the image of God as a result of your godly influence, your godly instruction, and your godly guidance. They came into the club naughty like hell, they are like little devils. But through your love, your patience, your godly influence, your instruction, your guidance, and your spirit of discipline, yeah, and your empathy, you put yourself into their shoe, you change life. And especially when you put yourself into under their skin, they appreciate you. And one empathic moment at one time, at a time, you win them over, and they slowly become transformed into Christ's image, and they will eventually give their life to Jesus Christ. Now, 2 things I want you to remember. In guiding and helping a Pathfinder, remember this first important principle, right? Which I put it as different strokes for different folks. Know who they are. That each of them, I told you, are different. Remember this point I was telling you just now? Every child is different. Remember this thing? So let me come back to know who they are. Every Pathfinder is different and require a different approach. That's why we say different strokes for different folks. Some will play table tennis using this particular stroke. Some will play table tennis or ping pong using different kind of stroke. Different folks will be more inclined to use a different approach. Second important thing to remember when helping Pathfinders is to know where they are. The first one is who they are. Second one is where they are. Meet them where they are. At what level are they? Some of them are not very smart, or rather they haven't bloomed yet. I wouldn't say they're not smart. They haven't come around yet. So you meet them at the level, okay, and raise them up slowly, right? So meet them where they are. This is such an important thing. So understand where they are. Now, in a club, you always find that there are some smarter than others and some who are not so smart. My concern is always those who are behind, and I will somehow find time to meet them where they are and to bring them up. And when you do that, you are truly a good leader. So the 2 points is know who they are and know where they are, and meet them where they are at their level. All right, some very important idea about the psychological profile of Pathfinders as they move from the age from childhood years to late childhood to mid-teen and to late teens. Okay, and all right, so these 4 areas I will quickly talk about. Right, in the early primary school years, some basic characteristic you can see. This is a time of discovering, a time of also connecting with values, belief, and faith of parents. Right? To them at this moment, the most important person in their life is actually the parent. So that's why whatever the parent believe, whatever the parent do, they will tend to do, they will tend to believe in. Right? But this is also a time for them to discover, to learn, and to connect with the world. But it is also a time of great fear because there's so much they do not know, and they are afraid of the unknown, and they've been frightened by things that they are not aware, that do not know what it is. Right? It's a time of great confusion because they don't have enough information. Now, then they move on later on to the junior and late primary school years, to early secondary years, and this is what I call the late childhood and early teen years. Then this is the time where before they were so clingy to their parents, they were clinging to their parents. Now you notice they start to take the first step beyond a cultural or parental bias. Last time they would tend to look to their parents. They are very biased. They are very influenced by their parents and by the culture. But for the first time now, they're willing to take a step out to explore the bigger world, so to speak, followed by a desire to connect with the new outlook, whatever they discover outside the circle that they grew up with. And that's the time they will start to insert their own person in the initial stage. Not fully, but you see them having one leg outside the fence, so to speak. They are becoming their own person, no longer just the father's son or the mother's daughter. They are now becoming their own person. They are now having their own idea, set of thinking, so to speak. It's the beginning of their identity, the beginning of their self-will. And this, of course, is the beginning also of discipline problem, right? So we have to be very, very loving and kind and patient in dealing with people at this age. Often young the young person formally connect with faith as a personal decision. And this is usually the time where we have influenced them well, they will want to give their life to Jesus. Right? So this is the golden period, to tell the truth. Right? The junior, the late childhood and early teen years are the golden period. After that, it becomes more difficult. This is the time where they start to connect with faith from as a personal decision. Now we move on to the mid-teen, the high school years. Okay, this is the time where parents doesn't factor so much. All right, less parental faith. They don't have so much faith in their parents, and they're now more influenced by their peers. It's the peers. Whatever their friends say matters a lot to them. What they see on TV, what they see on the mass media matters a lot to them, because that's what their friends are watching, right? Or the movies and the TV programs. So that is the beginning of tension between what we are called the inherited faith and their personalized faith. Inherited faith is the faith of the parents, but now they're seeing things outside the circle. That there's things like evolution, there are things of other religion, right? And they are starting to ask questions. Now, let me tell you something. When Pathfinder asks questions, it's not a bad thing, right? It's not a bad thing. So do not be worried when Pathfinder asks a question, right? Be patient and try to answer them. Now, this is the time, as I told you, they assert their individuality and their identity and take a step beyond their previous limits. Before that, they live very much within a tight limit, but now they are taking a step outside the limit. Their interest in faith can vary, right? If they have not accepted Christ earlier, at this moment, their faith is what I call sometimes very sporadic. It will come and go, sometimes totally dead, and sometimes very intense curiosity. So this is the time where it's very sporadic, okay? Can come and go. It's also a time to be authentic to one chosen faith. They want to be authentic. They don't just want to follow what their parents believe. They want to choose something they can truly believe in. All right. Now we come to the post-high school period, the late teen years. This is where they become very untraditional. They are starting to experiment with new ideas, experiment with new faith, and they are often restless, the time of rebellion, right? They will challenge. And this is the time they formulate the most important life direction in their life, what they want to do, what they want to believe in, all right? So this is a very critical period, the so-called late teen years, a time of great rebellion against parental authority, in fact, against any authority for that matter, right? Especially they are from those of the culture, because they are exploring and they are coping with their newfound adult independence, okay? Because they are now moving towards adult, and they are trying to be a full adult or independent, but of course, they are not fully equipped for it 100% yet. And they recognize that they are quite inadequate with regards to faith shaping, because some of the questions they ask, they don't have the answers. So this is why Bible study becomes very useful at this period, because they don't have the answers to life questions. And so if you are smart, you know to deal with them, you will know that this is a good time for them to be involved in Bible classes where they can ask all the toughest questions, right? Because they are inadequate to find the answers. All right, now let me move to another area. Another way to understand Pathfinder is what I call the developmental task. Now this, if you have ever studied psychology, you'll be very acquainted with the term development task, okay? I've did child psychology, I've done adolescent psychology, and I've done general psychology when I was studying. So in psychology, you will hear the term development task. These are tasks at each stage of our development, from the time of a baby to that of a toddler, right, to a teenager, to a adult, and then to old age. And at every age, there is a set of skills that you must achieve to be happy at your level. All right. So if you are at this level, the toddler age, there's a set of skills, and those are what we call development tasks that you need to accomplish to be happy to be at that level. If not, you will be unhappy. And likewise, when you reach the adolescent period, there's a set of development tasks. Now, today we're going to talk about the general development tasks of the Pathfinder growing up years. The first one of the tasks they will need to accomplish is the decreased dependence on family. Yes, because they know they cannot always rely on their parents because they are growing up into adulthood. When you become an adult, you have to be financially independent. You have to think for yourself. You have to work for yourself. And so this is one of the tasks of anyone growing up, decreasing dependency on family through increasing self-reliance. They learn to do things on their own. Number two, and now this is a decrease, all right? But at the same time, there's an increase of a sense of belonging through family activity and also friend. They know the importance of belonging. They know the importance of having a sense of who we are, all right, of belonging, all right? So belonging is a very important thing. Uh, that's why friendship and with peers is so important, and bonding with family is also important. Number three, they learn basic adult concept, right? Especially in adult reasoning. You can no longer reason like a child, you know. You have to start thinking logically, rationally, and that's all part of adult reasoning. This all Pathfinder must be working towards adult reasoning and also adult tasks to do things that big people do. Cook for yourself, how to repair a tire, a flat tire, how to change a black bulb, that kind of stuff. How to do things which adults do. Then also learn to communicate in a realistic manner. Now, when you're a child, you talk in a foolish manner, right? You talk about things which are quite impossible. But as you grow older, you have to learn to speak in a more realistic manner of things you can actually do, not wild, crazy dreams, right? So you're learning to speak or to communicate with others realistically, and then becoming more active and cooperative family member. Now you understand, as you grow older, you really have to become more active because you cannot, like a child, everything was done for you. But now as you grow older, you have to contribute your part in keeping the house clean, in watering the garden, cleaning the car, washing the car, that kind of stuff. So as everyone grows up, recognize you have to have your share of responsibility. You have to be active as a family member, to be cooperative, and then to become more affectionate, to be loved and to love. You cannot be a loner, okay? Just as you wish people to love you, you must also learn to be loving. All right, you must also learn to be loving. All right, becoming more affectionate, to be loved as well as to loved. Number seven, developing self-control skill. Now this is so important. As a child, you can throw temper tantrums, but when you grow up and you throw temper tantrum, people look down at you. They say you are still a child and yet you're an adult. All right, you must learn to cope with feelings of frustration, of anger, or stress in what I call a cool manner. And this is one of the things that Pathfinder leader must teach our Pathfinder. You are growing up, so you cannot just throw tantrums anymore. You cannot just throw things or pinch your neighbor or bite your neighbor, the kind of thing, or pull the girl's hair. You have to learn to control your temper. So this is one of the challenges in growing up, developing self-control skills when expressing stress. And now this is a challenge, very big challenge, identifying with one's gender and gender social role. By this time, they really need to be comfortable with their own sexual identity, that they have accepted, yes, I'm a boy, they have accepted I'm a girl. What our greatest worry is this, that due to unbalanced influence or in a very dysfunctional family, a boy identify himself as a boy and a girl identify himself a boy identify himself as a girl and the girl identify himself as a boy. Now this will become very problematic, all right, and it can lead to homosexuality, lesbianism, and so on. Now, as Pathfinder leaders, watch out for this tendency, right? When you start to see this, you have to let that boy to spend more time doing men's stuff and to become comfortable with the male gender role, and likewise girls to do more of the female lady stuff and to become more uh, comfortable with the female stuff, so that they become, if not, this will become a big problem when they grow up, because they become dysfunctional when it comes to their gender, and they will be unhappy, to tell the truth. All right, they will be very, very happy, and as I said, it can lead to homosexuality and so on. So please watch out for this, all right, that when you see a boy wanting to spend so much time playing with girls, uh, you have to be very careful, gentle in getting out to play basketball with the boys and so on, rather than letting the boy play Barbie dolls with the girls and that kind of stuff. And when you see a girl always wanting to run with boys and not wanting to play with girls, you have to be very gentle to get her to do more things with the girls, so that you help them identify with their own gender. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. All right. Number 9, establish what I call a moral conscience. Okay. Oh, sorry. Establish a conscience. right? Or sense of morality, a moral code and conduct that they know is wrong to steal. Now, when they were young, their parents act as their pair of eyes. Hey, don't do this, don't do that. But as they grow old, when they have freedom to go to the shopping center by themselves, now this is where the parents is not watching them, where the teachers is not watching them, and they think there's no one around. And here is something they want, where they pickpocket the thing, where they steal the thing and put it in their pocket without paying. Now this is what we need to teach Pathfinders, okay, to tell them that there's a sense of right and wrong. You need to work for things. You don't steal things. You don't take things without permission, right? Just like you do not want people to take your things, you don't do the same, right? So you help them develop what I call a tender conscience. Now this is important, all right? Number 10, right? The last of the development tasks of the Pathfinder growing up age, learning to work, all right, and especially to work as a team. Teaching kids to work hard without killing their love of learning. Give them tasks to do, okay? Now, of course, don't give them something so overwhelming that they hate to do it. Give them tasks at their level and then increase the intensity, but not overwhelm them, right? Like, for example, feed the chicken if I have chickens in my family, poultry, I will ask them to feed the chicken, all right? Uh, and something they can be comfortable with, rather than to try to catch the goat or catch the horse, which is beyond their ability at their young age. Okay, right? So learning to work, every Pathfinder must learn to work, to do their share of work, right? Now, this one I have mentioned many times before in my training, something I developed personally. I call it the 3R of learning to become a good citizen and becoming a well-adjusted person. Remember this 3R, and they form the corners of the triangle, the three of the so-called equilateral, the isosceles triangle. Sorry, right? Is it equilateral? Yeah, equilateral or three-sided. Same. The 3R word is responsibility, rights, and respect. Now, how do they concern each other? All right. Now, I always tell people this. It always begins with responsibility. Yes. Pathfinder, before you ask for your right to do this, I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to have the right to do this, all right? And I want to be respected. This can only come when you learn the very first thing, which is the importance of being responsible. It starts with teaching our kids the importance of being responsible, because only when you have demonstrated that deep sense of responsibility will more rights be conferred to you. For example, in any country, when a person has been responsible to learn the highway code, to learn the rights and wrong when you drive a car, that you cannot just drive 200 miles an hour or drive while drinking. That's irresponsible. That's why we don't give you a driving license. Because you have demonstrated your responsibility, you have studied the highway code, you have observed the highway code, you have the driving laws. That's why we give you the driving license. We give you the right to drive. No rights is ever conferred to someone who's irresponsible. So teach them, your Pathfinder. It begins with being responsible, and when you have shown yourself to be more and more responsible, more and more rights will be granted to you. All right, and therefore, when you exercise your rights in a responsible manner, you will be respected in society. They see you as somebody who exercise your right in a responsible manner. You drive a car and you don't drink alcohol, because that is very irresponsible. You park your car in the right places. You don't overspeed. Okay, you put on the safety belt and that kind of stuff. So respect comes from someone who exercises rights in a responsible manner. So you can see the interaction between the 3R. Now, unfortunately, in today's world, people start off from the base. I want to be respected. I want this right. I want that right. And they have not yet demonstrated responsibility. So I always tell people, remember this 3R, the 3R that leads to a good citizenship, good citizenship, and a well-adjusted person. First, learn the importance of responsibility that leads you being given rights. And when you exercise your right in a responsible manner, you are respected in the community. All right. Now, so far we talked about understanding Pathfinders. Today, right now, at this moment, I want to switch to something that is parallel to it, which is that when you understand Pathfinder, now how do we teach them? The most important teaching really comes not so much in terms of direct or didactic teaching, but more through the power of influence by example. So I want to say this again. We adults, we tend to spend a lot of time lecturing or instructing children and forget that children learn more by observing what you do. Children learn more by personal example and not so much by direct teaching. So I want to tell you how important it is for us directors, club officers, counselors, right? As adult, as a parent, to teach by being a positive role model, right? If you're a person who lose your temper easily and throw things at your husband, or you throw things, all right, at one another, and your children see it, then blame them if they do the same thing to their brothers and sisters, because monkey see, monkey do. So it's very important for us to set the right example, to be good, positive role models. Now, therefore, adults need to set themselves as positive role model, because children will do exactly what you're doing, because this supports ed, uh, character education more than anything else. Character development comes as a result of we teachers setting the example. Now, in this respect, let me share with you this so-called idea of being a positive role model. A positive role model show understanding, compassion, and kindness. We are understanding, we are compassionate, we are kind. And when you do that, you are already being a very positive role model. And you are somebody in charge of emotion. You are somebody who know how to laugh, and you don't even mind being laughed at, okay? Because it's okay once in a while to be laughed at, right? And so somebody make a joke of you, don't get so angry you want to smash the guys up. So just as you know, so learn to laugh with people, all right? Okay, use humor. Take your responsibility. Take responsibility for your action. Whatever you do, be res- be responsible enough to own up to it and say, yes, I was the one. Don't pass the blame to someone else, okay? You take care of your health, and when the young ones see you taking care of your health, that you bathe, you exercise, you don't smoke, you don't drink, they will do the same. And then when you are stressed, what you do, you walk around, you take deep breath to tell yourself, think carefully, don't rush into silly decision. And when the Pathfinders see you doing this, taking deep breath and you're stressed, they will be impressed that you are not the one who will explode and start throwing things and yell on top of your voice and so on. And you are very patient. This is a very good thing. That no matter how naughty the kids, you are patient. And then you are somebody who stop and think and rethink. You say, okay, hold on, I need some time to think about that, right? And Pathfinder appreciate the fact that you don't rush into decision. And then another thing Pathfinder appreciate is that you're willing to confess that I'm not perfect. I do make mistake. So let go of the idea that you're super perfect. No, we do make mistake. And when you do make mistake, apologize to those people, all right, and let them know that I do make mistake, and that makes you respected more than anything else. And this is all part of being a positive role model. Now, as I was just saying just now, there's a very famous poem written by Edgar Guest, and this is Edgar Guest, the famous American poet. A poem that I really admire, I really love, and it's called Sermons We Can See. Oh, sorry, Sermons We See. Right? It's a six stanza poem. I want you to look at what he said. I would rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I rather one, that means you, should walk with me than just merely tell me the way. You see, the eye is a better pupil, a better student, and more willing than the ear. No, my ear hears it, right? But not so willing, but my eye is a much better student, is it? Fine counsel is confusing. You can give all the advice, but it's very confusing. But example is always clear. Look at how beautiful this poem goes. I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day. I'd rather one should walk with me than merely tell the way. The eye is a better pupil and more willing than the ear. Fine counsel is confusing, but example always clear. And then he continued. And the best of all preachers, and I also say teachers, are the men who live their creed. Whatever you do, whatever you say, you actually do it. For to see good put into action is what everybody needs. I soon can learn to do if you let me see it done. I need to see you doing it so I can learn to do it. I can watch your hands in action, but your tongue is too fast, may run. You talk too fast, I cannot follow, but if you do it, I can see it. You see? And the lecture you deliver may be wise and may be true, but I'd rather get my lesson by observing what you do. For I might misunderstand you and the high advice you give, but there's no misunderstanding how you act and how you live. There's no misunderstanding when I see you doing it by example. When I see a deed of kindness, I am eager to be kind. When a weaker brother stumble and a strong man stay behind to help him, just to see if he can help him, then the wish grows strong in me to become as big and thoughtful as I know that friend to be. What I see in you, I also want to do. That's what he's saying. And all travelers can witness that the best of guides today, the best of teachers, is not the one who tell them, but the one who shows the way by the example. One good man teaches many. Men believe what they behold. You see, we believe what we see. One deed of kindness noticed is worth 40 than that which was preached, than that which was told. And then he said, who stands with men of honor learns to hold this honor dear. So if you stand with men of honor, you learn to hold the same honor. For right living speaks a language which to everyone is clear. Though an able speaker charms me with his eloquence, I say, I rather see a sermon than hear one any day. Now, this is so beautiful. The importance of being an example. 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 10 says, you are witnesses, and so is God, how we devoutly and uprightly and blamelessly we behave towards you, believers. So we have to set an example. And then another Bible text in 2 Thessalonians chapter uh, 3, verse 7 and 9. For you yourself know how you ought to follow our example, because we do not act in an undisciplined manner among you, in order to offer ourselves as a model for you, so that you would follow our example. So I want to say this, the first great gift we can bestow on any child is a good example. Now, so I want to talk a bit mentoring right now, the need to mentor. When we think about mentoring someone, remember the principle called time, T-I-M-E. Now, spend time. A good mentor always spend time with the mentee. The mentee is the one that you're mentoring. Time to do what? To do four things: teach, inspire, motivate, empower. So let me tell you, when we spend time with Pathfinders, we are, in a way, you are mentoring them. And when you mentor, what you do, you teach them, you inspire them, all right, by your example, you motivate them by your example, and you empower them by actually teaching them, by showing them how to do. So time is expressed as teach, inspire, motivate, empower. So remember that. That's what good mentors do. And mentoring has got 4 areas, all right? The 4 areas requiring mentoring is that of heart, soul, body, and mind. Heart, soul, body, and mind. When we mentor the heart, we're talking about mentoring their feeling, to teach them to be positive in their feeling, to have good attitude, not to have negative attitude, to have prejudice attitude, that kind of thing, to be big-hearted, to be generous. Now that is mentoring the heart. All right, we're talking about attitude, all right? Now then we talk about value, all right? All right, and belief, to be kind-hearted, that kind of thing, to be generous, not to have prejudice, that kind of thing. So that would be a belief and a value. Then we talk about the body, image. You yourself must dress well. That's why I, as an officer, I always make sure I dress well as a Pathfinder officer, to inspire the Pathfinders to do the same, right? So body, you motivate them, you mentor them in the area of image, that they dress well, they look well, they comb their hair, they bathe, and they are well behaved, their well-being, physically speaking, all right? They sleep enough, they drink enough, they eat enough, they exercise enough. And then the mind, you mentor them, teaching them skills, imparting to them knowledge. So the 4 areas requiring mentoring is the heart, soul, body, and mind. Feeling, attitude, value, beliefs, image, well-being, skills, and knowledge. Right, now I want to talk about 2 more areas before I finish this section. All right. This area has to do with Pathfinder fears. Many of us are not aware that one of the greatest things you can do as a Pathfinder leader is to help Pathfinder overcome their fears. Some fears are real, some fears are imaginary, right? And fears can be very paralyzing that prevents your kid from achieving, prevents their dream from aspiring, reaching their aspiration. So what do you do as Pathfinder leaders? Help them. How do you help them deal with their fear? Right? As Pathfinder leaders, we must understand the physical signs of fear, such as shaky hands, thumb sucking, they're quite big and they're still sucking their fingers, or nervous little ticks, they move or they scratch unnecessary, that kind of stuff. Those are called nervous ticks, right? All right, or they slap themselves, that kind of stuff, right? When this happen, respond to the feeling behind these physical symptoms. These are what I call nervous symptoms of fear, insecurity, uncertainty. And now we're going to explore how do we respond to those physical signs of fear. Let the Pathfinder, first of all, so-called talk about their fear openly. Even though it may sound foolish to you, they are afraid of ghosts, they're afraid of monsters, they're afraid of the Pokemon behind the curtain. It may sound ridiculous to you, but please listen to them. Let them speak out, talk about their fear. And the more they do, the more they will be able to mix. The more they do this, the more they will be able to make sense of those feelings as you help to clarify those things that used to paralyze them. Now, when I was young, I had a lot of fears. I was afraid of ghosts. I was afraid of dead bodies. I was afraid of funerals. I was afraid of the dark. That was my fear, and it really paralyzed me. It prevented me from growing of achieving. That is an honest confession. Thank God I became a Christian then, and through the power of prayer, overcome it. But I grew up in an environment where instead of people helping me overcome fear, they fostered it by telling me more ghost story, you know, more story of the ghost and evil spirit that make me so frightened. So I realized how dangerous it is to grow up in that environment. I was paralyzed by fear. So as a Pathfinder leader, I always tell people don't talk about ghost stories. Some people think it's so fun, campfire, talk about ghost story. That is the worst thing you can do as a Pathfinder leader. We don't talk about ghost story, okay, or spooky tales, that kind of thing. All right. Some kids will love new things, and others will not be willing to do new things. Some kids are willing to try everything, all right, okay, and speak to everyone, while others are very hesitant to try new things, hesitant to make new friends, hesitant to speak up. They will take longer to warm up to others. So please remember what I told you. Every child is different, different strokes for different folks. Give each Pathfinder their space to do it at their own pace. This is a very important principle in Pathfinding leadership. Recognize they are individual, give them space to grow up, all right? All right, so deal with them individually. Now, one of the things that Pathfinder can do to help Pathfinder overcome fear is to give them the information that they lack so that they can see the scary thing in perspective, to see in context. And then they realize that it was a foolish fear. For example, the thing there's some monster behind the curtain, And then when you show them and that there's no such thing, that the moment turn on the light, the darkness go off, that kind of stuff, then they begin to realize they were quite irrational. So give them the information sometimes they lack to put the scary thing out of context, point out what they can't see, right? Remember that they don't always understand things at that young age, right? So things are not always so obvious to them. So one of the things we do is to give them the correct information to help them overcome their fears. Now, another very important thing is to overcome fear through play acting. Right now, some of them are afraid of height, but if you make uh, overcoming height as a play thing, they will learn to overcome the fear of height. See, play is a very important part of learning. That's the reason why people develop what we call the high elements. Now, these are all part of what we call high elements, where they learn to overcome the fear of height by doing fun things, right? Okay, and they are totally protected. You see, there is a harness, there is this lifeline to catch them. They wear helmet and they have gloves and that kind of stuff, So, so this is what I call overcoming fear through play, right? Because play is often a rehearsal of real life. If the Pathfinder is scared of something, introduce that overcoming of fear through play, through games, all right, through activities. Now, for example, some people are afraid of water, right? They're afraid of water, but then, as you bring them canoeing and then swimming as a group, they learn to overcome it. So through play, they can practice their responses in dealing with the particular fear, right? That they can actually overcome it, okay? Right? And get comfortable with scary things from a safe distance. Now, I used to be afraid of swimming because I had a drowning experience, but now I love water because I've overcome my fear. Fear is paralyzing, as I told you, right? Now, be careful not to overreact, okay? When you, as a leader, when somebody tell you about their fear, what? You're afraid of ghosts, ha ha ha. Now, don't do that. You are not only showing disrespect, but or scream, what? Don't overreact, okay? While it is important to validate what the pathfinder is feeling, it's also important not to overreact to the fear. What? You mean you do that? So be very careful that you don't overreact as a leader. By doing so, you are reinforcing their fear, right? And they dare not talk to you, all right? Be very calm when they open up to you. Whatever thing they're saying, just remain calm, right? How could you do something that you don't shout at them in surprise, because you only make them more frightened. So again, don't overreact, right? You you react, but don't overreact. Get down on their level and talk to them about it after naming what you see. Explain to them what the situation is and help them, right? But you don't overreact. Teach Pathfinder that avoidance is not the issue. Some people are afraid, so they keep avoiding the topic, avoiding the issue. But you need to tell them, just like the ostrich, who's afraid and bury his hand under the so-called earth, it's not a wise thing because the problem is still there. So teach Pathfinder that avoidance is not always the best solution. Avoidance takes away the opportunity for them to learn, to confront their fear, to learn to be resilient. It means to be down, but you spring up again. That's what I mean by resilient. Down, but you spring back to action again. All right. Avoidance takes away the ability to become resilient, to be strong, and to be resourceful. So teach them that avoidance is not a good thing, right? So tell them to confront their fear, and I will help you overcome their fear gradually, step by step, step by step. Some people are afraid of needles. The moment they see needles, they cry, they'll run away like crazy. So teach them that, they need to learn that a little bit of discomfort is okay. It's not as painful as you think. If you take a deep breath, you'll notice that it's not as painful as you think, and it's only for a very short while. You know, it's just a small prick. Just said it, right? And that as you learn to overcome the discomfort, it is a sign that you're getting braver, right? And that they have what it takes to cope with their fear. Now, when I was young, I used to be very afraid of the needle, the injection, the syringe, But the years later, I would go and donate blood 4 times a year, 3, 4 times a year. And each time I donate, I'll be pricked at least 3 times, to test your blood, and to put in the painkiller, and then finally the one that extract the blood. So every year I'll be poked 12 times, so to speak, because I was a donor, a regular blood donor. Every 3 months I would donate blood at one time, right? So I have overcome the fear of these needles. Now, set them on a course that would empower them to find within themselves the strength and resource to overcome that fear, to manage that fear and anxiety, that they become super boys in the end. Remind them that they know the answer, that you can actually find the answer to those questions, and direct them to find their own answers, to back up their concern. So if you're frightened, just go and learn more about snakes, learn more about a spider, and you'll realize they are not as bad as you think they are. Just because of one bad experience doesn't mean that all dogs are bad. So as you teach them and provide them information, they learn to overcome their fear, right? So let me end by talking about the 4 common fears which Pathfinder face, and this is the last section, right? The last section. 4 common fears which Pathfinder fear. The first one is the fear of being rejected. Pathfinder really fear being rejected, and that's the reason why they conform to peer pressure. They are frightened of not being liked. They are frightened of being judged, and then when people laugh, they think they are laughing behind their back, and they feel very hurt if they think people are laughing behind their back or talking behind their back. Now, as a counselor, when you see this, talk to them, right, and tell them that is that that they're not rejecting you, and that there's no reason why they should reject you. And if in fact they reject you, find out the reason why to win back their friendship. So address this fear of them, the fear of being rejected, of being judged, of being disliked. It's a very powerful fear that caused many to drop out of the club, to leave the church for that reason. This is due to an increased dependence on their friends, especially during the adolescent age. Remember, I told you as they grow up, friends become very important. They no longer go to the parents. So, and then they discover their friends don't like them. So this is a terrible thing for them. So this is where we need to help them to find the answers as to why this is happening, whether it's real or imaginary. All right. Okay. Help them to build up self-concept, to have a healthy self-concept that they now know that they are not laughing about them. And even if they laugh at them, these people are just plain silly. Let them laugh. So don't care about them laughing. So that's having a very healthy self-concept, so that they do not have to be too overly concerned as to what their friends think of them. So one of the things we do as Pathfinders leaders is to build up their self-esteem, have a healthy self-concept. So this fear of being rejected, fear of people laughing doesn't bother them anymore. So this is also one way to help them overcome their fear of rejection. Now, then there's also the fear of being hurt, being sick, and that of death, of dying. Death is a real fear because some people have actually seen their loved one die and their loved one in great pain when in the last stage of cancer and so on. And this become a real fear for some of the Pathfinders. With social media, they will tend to hear about bad news, about accident, about people killing themselves, or people being hurt, of wars and tragedy. And they come to believe that this thing might actually happen to them. But then, you know what happened? Again, this is a lot is actually fantasized that the same thing may happen to them. It may not necessarily be, right? So some people, as a result of overexposure to media, mass media, they think the same thing of war, of being mugged on the street by gangsters, being killed by murderers will happen to them. So it is an irrational fear. But of course, the fear of getting hurt and sick, that's a real fear, because they've seen it. So what's important is to help them keep their fear at a level that it doesn't get in the way of them becoming brave. That it's okay to be frightened, but do not be over frightened, by that. Don't be over frightened by it to the point you dare not do anything, right? Or to the point you don't want to learn any new thing, right? To the point that you don't want to that you always find the safest way out, rather than discover new adventures, to discover what you're capable of overextending yourself. So this is one of the things that we need to help our Pathfinders. Third fear, okay, we're coming to an end very soon. The fear of their family being broken up. This, my brother and sisters, listen carefully. I've experienced this with Pathfinders. I remember there was a girl who was in my junior Pathfinder club, and this was a fear. The parents were always shouting about to kill each other, and she was always frightened of this, right? And one day she ran away from home, and I knew where she was because I was close to her. I was able to help the parents find her. You know, because the family breakup really had a very terrible influence on her. It affected her very negatively, right? Now, this fear is real. This especially when Pathfinders witness their parents shouting at each other or having fight, and they are so afraid that their parents will divorce and they are left with only one parent, and they want a complete family. So pray for them, all right? So this is something that where you really comes in and tell them that no matter what, you will always be there. So even if they lose one parent, yeah, you compensate for the loss by being a good friend, a good listening ear, that no matter what, you'll always be there for them. Because sometimes divorces cannot be helped, right? This is something beyond our control. But what is within our control is to love them unconditionally, that even if their family suffer a divorce, your friendship with them will be there to help them to tide things over, to help them reach the point of maturity to be strong. Assure them that parents, uh, do quarrel, and not all of them will end up in divorce. But even if they're divorced, all right, God will take care of you, and I will always love you, and I will help you through. All right, so that's very important, right? Oh, sorry, there's one more fear. The fear of how they are doing at school, exams, and not being able to make it in life after school is over. Now, this is a real fear, especially when there's so much emphasis on exams and doing well, and they couldn't understand what the teacher is doing, and they're falling behind. Or due to some family problem, they couldn't focus and they're falling behind. And so this impact them, psychologically speaking, because they're not doing well in school. Help Pathfinder develop good study habits. Teach them to pay attention in class, to write down notes, to ask questions. Now, that's a very important thing I teach Pathfinder. Ask questions, either in class or after the class, okay? Don't be afraid. Or ask people who know. Ask a classmate who know. Find someone to tutor them. And if you have a Pathfinder member who's a good teacher, get your Pathfinder staff to tutor your Pathfinder, all right? And if needed, and you're doing a great favor. Let them know also that good grades is not always the only path to success. There are people who don't do well in school, but they still become success in life. So to help them realize that, you know, exam is not the only thing in life. All right, I have finished this section. I hope you've been blessed.